The Giro d'Italia is the most exciting cycling event in Europe that takes place every year. What makes it so compelling is that things are never the same each year, and after the event is over, cycling enthusiasts everywhere are left anticipating what the next race will be like, with the unveiling of the much-awaited 2023 route for the Giro d'Italia finally here. Stay tuned as we talk all about it in this video. First up, let's get into the new 2023 route. As we just said, this is pretty much the most exciting cycling event in Europe, with people eagerly waiting for the return of Giro d'Italia every year. That's exactly why it's no surprise that the organizers had a huge ceremony in Milan to announce the route for 2023. The 2023 Italian Grand Tour will start in Abruzzo in southern Italy and will end in Rome. The race route, which usually crosses over to the Italian islands of Sardinia or Sicily, will be a bit different this year. The riders will be in Switzerland for a bit on stage 13 and will finish uphill in Crans, Montana, in the district of Valais. That same day, riders will climb the Cri de Coeur as well as the Col del Gran San Bernardo. This is definitely going to be the high point of the race, and we mean that literally. Riders will be 8,100 feet above the ground. The highest point in the race is known as Coppi, in case you needed an interesting piece of trivia about the event. All in all, things seem pretty intense, and the 2023 route is definitely not easy, but it's going to be one hell of a ride. The Giro d'Italia is definitely one of the hardest events in cycling season, but that's why only real professionals compete. Next, let's get into some more details about the landscape of these places. We just covered what areas the race is going to go through so far, but there's a lot more you need to know if you want to keep up with the Giro d'Italia in 2023. The race is going to be extremely challenging, considering that riders are going to be climbing a whopping 160,000 feet in vertical elevation. You can't even imagine the type of strength this whole thing would take. The Cri de Coeur alone is an incredible climb, over 21 kilometers long. The slope is also insane, with an average gradient of about 8%. It's one of the steepest and hardest climbs, and riders are going to be racing to the top. Can't wait to see them in action. As for the Coppi in the 2023 race, Col del Gran San Bernardo is not a new name to anyone. It's one of the most famous roads in the Swiss Alps. The scenery is just majestic, and tourists from all over the world pass through this attraction just to admire it. This isn't a new route to the Giro d'Italia, but it sure doesn't mean that things are going to be easy for the riders. The ascent is about 30 kilometers, a few more than the Cri de Coeur. Overall, the race seems pretty exciting and insanely challenging, but we just can't wait for it. The Giro d'Italia management has been hyping it up, even though the cycling season just ended this month. Next, let's get into the timeline of the race. The professional cycling season starts off in January, with the first race in Adelaide with the Santos Festival of Cycling. The Giro d'Italia is one of the more famous cycling races, and so the surrounding hype is definitely a lot greater than other races. It's considered a rival to the Tour de France. This year, the Tour de France is happening in July, while the Italian Tour will start in May. The cycling race will commence in Abruzzo, as we mentioned before, on the 6th of May. Riders will pass through all these scenic places near and inside Italy, spanning over 2,000 miles until the 28th of May when the race ends. Now, let's get into one important aspect of the Giro d'Italia race. Timing is going to be everything in this racing event. The 2023 Giro is the first since 2013 to have over 43 miles of time trialing. That being said, there are going to be 3 individual time trials. The first trial will be on the opening day, the next will be at stage 9, and the last one will happen on the penultimate stage. The last trial will be a tough climb up Monte Santo della Sari, which has an elevation of a stunning 1,000 meters. That's not even the scariest part for the riders though, considering there are gradients of over 22% in that area. For a lot of riders, time trials hold bad memories, but unfortunately, it's just something they'll have to work on if they want to win the 2023 Giro d'Italia. Let's not forget another extremely important aspect of the 2023 Giro. By the looks of it, it's most likely that the race will be decided on the Dolomites range in the final week. One thing about this race is that of the 7 mountain stages, most of them are in the final week, which means that things are going to be very action-packed in that last week of the race. Half of the last stages have an extremely high level of difficulty, and the penultimate day's time trial is going to be particularly difficult for the riders. A time trial on a troublesome route like this is a nightmare. The hardest part of next year's Giro is definitely going to be stage 9. It has 5 classified climbs, all of which are insane on another level. Did we mention that there are absolutely no flat sections in that stage? Good luck to all the riders this year. It's always the last few stages that get even the best riders down because of how tricky things can be. The landscape, the time trial, and the pressure are bound to get to the riders, and we can't wait to see who wins this one. Finally, let's look at one last thing about the Giro. As we talked about earlier in the video, the race will be finishing in Rome, the capital. This is the 5th time in the last 106 years that the race will finish here, so it's definitely a special one. The 10 laps of a 7-mile circuit through Rome might not be the easiest, but it's going to be scenic, considering riders will pass through a lot of historical sites. This is a super important aspect of the race, at least according to ESPN. Expectations for the 2023 Giro d'Italia are high, and even though most cycling events just ended in October, everyone's already gearing up for the race in Italy next season. How exciting! Now, let's get into the history of the Giro d'Italia. Even if you've been keeping up with the race for a long time, chances are you don't know the full history of the event. After all, it is a century-old tradition, and there are definitely a few things you should know about the Giro d'Italia if you're excited about it in 2023. But first, let's look at some facts about the cycling tour. The Giro d'Italia is one of the top 3 most important events in the world of cycling. It literally marks the start of the professional cycling season every single year in May, so it's that special. Cyclists who win the Trofeo Senza Fine are probably the best cyclists in the whole world because of how challenging the race is. Next, where did it all even begin? As it turns out, even one of the biggest cycling events in the world had some really humble beginnings. Back in 1909, 127 cyclists set out from Milan in the middle of the night. Their destination? Naples. So, over 8 long days, these riders traveled to Naples and then back to Milan, averaging about 300 kilometers every day, which is quite literally outstanding. 300 kilometers in a single day? That's an achievement in itself right there. Today, people from all over the world come to race in the Giro d'Italia. The first winner, though, was an Italian man named Luigi Ganna. The man is a legend, especially when you consider how heavy bikes used to be in those days. Plus, they didn't even have a gear shift, so downhill looked like a modern-day horror story. As you can probably tell, things have changed a lot since the first race. Now, the Giro d'Italia lasts a few weeks and has 21 stages, with each stage being considerably shorter, about 150 kilometers. Lastly, how the idea for the Giro d'Italia came about. The Giro was established after the Tour de France, and it's frequently referred to as the Tour de France's younger brother. At the time, the most famous sports magazine in Italy was La Gazzetta dello Sport. It was this magazine's editors who came up with the idea in order to win more readers than the magazine's French counterpart. The Giro d'Italia is based on the Tour de France. Both started small, and a century later, the Giro is one of the biggest cycling events, as well as sporting events in the whole world. It's really insane. It seems like it's just been growing and growing, and we can't wait to see what's next for this Italian cycling race. That's a wrap for this video. What do you think about the route for the 2023 Giro d'Italia? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.